You know, there is a constant debate that takes place when looking at the subject of technology between people that argue that technology is part of who we are and those that believe that technology is fundamentally unnatural and that it's a tool that's being used to ultimately destroy the world. I don't fall into that camp. I echo Kevin Kelly's ideas that stipulate that actually technology is the real skin of our species. Technology is the exterioration of our nervous system. Technology is our extended mind. iPhone, therefore I am. But think about it. Technology is literally the way we turn our mind inside out, right? The cognitive philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers describe it as a kind of scaffolding that extends our thought, our reach, and our vision. We are a tool-making animal that has been in a symbiotic feedback loop with technology since the beginning of stone tools. I mean, think about it. Once we created stone tools, our jaws shrank. Once we discovered that fire could cook our foods, making every meal more efficient, it freed up the cognitive real estate necessary for the emergence of culture, religion, and arts. So you might say that who we are is due to the feedback loops between us and our tools, to the degree that our tools become extended appendages that even though they are not within our biological skin tissue, they are nonetheless a part of our cognitive arsenal. They are a part of us the same way a nest is a part of a bird and a spider's web is a part of the spider. It is our extended phenotype, it is who we are, it is our termites colony, it is temperature controlled, it is the extension of our mindedness. This is technology, this is the technium, the seventh kingdom of life.
Thank you, Jody, and welcome everyone. It is a beautiful day and a beautiful day to have the kind of discussion we're going to be having today. I'll tell you, welcome to Humanity of Technology. And we believe in McMinnville, we have a number of things. We have livability. We have a community that's phenomenal. We have infrastructure. We support manufacturing. We support retail. We support agriculture. We support tourism. We are all about partnerships. And that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today along with technology. One of our strong partners is MEDP and Jody. And when we are looking at economic development in this community, that's who we look towards. And so today is also talking and creating partnerships. In McMinnville, we're all about looking for companies that are embracing, creating, and innovating with new technology. And so we look forward to the discussions with our panel and from you today on the new technologies that are coming down the road. And Jody, with that, we'll have you come up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. Welcome. As the mayor said, my name is Jody Christensen. I'm with the McMinnville Economic Development Partnership, and we are so excited to be having this conversation today. My partner in crime is Heather, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Okay, hi there. I'm Heather McNutt-Kessner. I'm a junior here at Linfield College, and one of my majors is mass communications, also known as journalism and media studies. So we're all about being digital citizens and tech.
Excellent, thank you. As part of MEDP's commitment to nurturing technology and innovation in manufacturing and other sectors in our community, we have launched a campaign called Tech2R, Growing Technology in Oregon's Wine Country. And the way we define technology is software, is innovation in the way that a manufacturer produces a product, in the way that people do their work. So technology comes in all different shapes and sizes, and we believe if we create a strong community and we network everyone together, we'll be a better, stronger community because of that. And so today, this is the launch for something really exciting. We have several programs and activities planned over the next several months, and you'll be hearing about that. So we are really thrilled that you're here at this first event. As you know, this is going to be a conversation with a group of panelist experts in all fields, and they have deep understanding of technology, both from a research perspective, from a global perspective, and also from the work that they do. So we want to make sure that you can feel engaged in that process. We expect this to be interactive, and that Heather will be roaming the floor today, taking your questions as we're beginning.
Yeah, and this year, Linfield's place theme, so every year we have a theme that we explore and kind of jump more in depth with, especially for incoming students on campus, is how to be a digital citizen. And by nature, we're all digital citizens, some more than others. My dad would like to, restrain from that a little bit. But what that means is that unlike, years earlier, we have the ability to connect with people from all corners of the world, from all walks of life. Facebook was only started about 12 years ago, and how our lives have changed because of that, and how technology is improving processes, is freeing up people to concentrate and work on other things, being able to take some roles and add to those responsibilities and kind of make industries move faster. And it's such an incredible thing that's kind of moved so quickly in our society, even just for me growing up, that's kind of important thing that Linfield's exploring this year.
And I think that what's really important about that, Heather, and for the rest of us to understand, is that a place like Linfield College, a place that embraces the connectivity between art and science, the place where research and data, those numbers, have different meanings when you bring those to design and imagination. And so at a private college like this, where it's about liberal arts and that connectivity, that's where the seed of what's next will be happening. And so we're really excited for MEDP. We have a strong relationship with Linfield College. We're inspired by the students. We have the opportunity to work with them. But we're really excited about making that connectivity to business. And how do we inspire business to be a partner with Linfield and draw those students into what we're doing on a day-to-day basis? So we're very excited to be here. And with that, we'd like to bring up our panelists. Our first panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is Skip Newberry, and we'll have you come up on stage. Thank you. Skip is the president and CEO of the Technology Association of Oregon. He's a frequent speaker on the topics and trends, economic development, and more. He has deep experience in making connectivity with local governments. He was a policy advisor to former Portland Mayor Sam Adams, where he embedded and ensured that technology and software played a key part in that city's strategy. Skip is also the chairman of the board of the Technology Councils of North America. Thank you for joining us.
All right, so next up, I'd like to welcome John Tapogna. And John is the president of ECO Northwest, the Pacific Northwest's largest economic consulting firm. He oversees all of the firm's overall business strategy and operations. Since starting in 1997, he had built practices in education, healthcare, human services, and tax policy. He has overseen the development of award-winning software tools utilized by the government. Welcome.
I have the pleasure of welcoming Brian Feit to the stage. He is the Chief Revenue Officer for Predicta, Inc., a McMinnville-based company using AI, that's artificial intelligence, to help companies make sense of information online. Brian has over 20 years of business experience, including as a partner of Unique Wire and as an executive in a variety of software and consumer electronic companies. Thank you.
We'd also like to welcome Robin Fahey. Robin works in software development and self-driving technology. After completing his bachelor's at Linfield in philosophy, Robin moved to San Francisco to wrangle geographic data at Apple Maps. In 2016, he switched into systems engineering of autonomous vehicle technology, contributing to efforts in safety testing, regulatory compliance, and launch readiness planning. As a McMinnville High School graduate, Robin is familiar with the McMinnville community and will be sharing his thoughts on how a city like McMinnville can utilize technology. Thanks, Robin. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to welcome Ashmit Jappi. He is a financial analyst at Aptio, a software company which aims to transform the way IT runs its business and makes decisions. He was born in South America and primarily grew up in Portland, Oregon. I'm sorry, I left a pause, but I was just turning a page. I have more. Further, he graduated from Linfield College in 2016 after studying both finance and computer science. He currently supports the corporate development and strategy aspects of business at Aptio and has previous experience at Amazon in PitchBook data. Now you can applaud.
So the way that we've structured the conversation today, again, it's a dialogue, so please feel free to ask questions. I know that's going to put you guys on the spot, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay. So what we're going to do is ask Skip to sort of set up what's currently happening in the tech sector for Oregon and what's happening for the future? What do we expect for the future? And other things as well. Sure. Yes. And then John's going to give us some perspective on recent research that he's done and some projections within the field that he works. So we'll get some context behind that. And then we'll ask each one of our entrepreneur panelists here to set up a little bit about what they're currently working on. And then we'll open it up for questions for you all. After this, we'll then adjourn to downstairs where we have a few beverages and a little bit of snack, and then you can really meet and mingle with everyone on the panel. So we'll start with you, Skip. So we'll let you just go ahead and share some information with us.
So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a population trend that's pretty impressive for Oregon. You've got a lot of coveted 18 to 34-year-olds that are highly educated that are relocating here. They've gained, in many cases, education and experience in other places. In some cases, they're choosing to get their education here and then putting down roots afterwards. You also have another trend that's interesting, and the state did some research on this last year where they found that for most other demographics, whether it's people who are getting on in years or middle-aged, there's also a lot of in-migration occurring. And so I think they looked at a report that said, Portland, Oregon was one of 2 places in the country, or Oregon in general was one of 2 states in the country that was experiencing this trend. The other was Maine. And I think that if I were to say who's got the best raw materials for future success, my money would be on Oregon. So there's some interesting trends going on that are largely outside of tech companies' control. But if you're going to be looking at where you're placing a tech company, starting a tech company, Oregon is pretty competitive from that standpoint. You have the ability to access talent, and talent is key. It's central to where companies are choosing to locate and stay. And I was sharing with some folks earlier today that a lot of the companies that we work with at the association that I work for are increasingly paying closer and closer attention to what their employees want and need. And so if you think about the war for talent or the lengths to which companies are going to attract and retain people, tech is really at the forefront there. You can joke about the Silicon Valley-like offices where you've got amenities all over the place with ping pong tables and personal chefs and all sorts of other things going on. That's only one piece of the puzzle. Really what that is kind of a superficial version of, how do we make employees happier and more productive so that they want to be a part of our company? A part of that's defining the culture and the focus on doing something that's mission-driven, where people are able to say, hey, I'm not only able to work in tech, which is a fulfilling career, but on top of that, we're doing stuff that's changing the world in some respects. And the thing that places like Oregon represent that Silicon Valley, I think, historically has not, is that when you think of Silicon Valley in the last, say, 15, 20 years, a conversation I had with a politician in DC about 10 years ago kind of encapsulates the view of Silicon Valley, which was, I didn't realize, this was the politician talking, that much was happening outside of Silicon Valley. That was the center of gravity for tech. But my idea of tech is essentially a bunch of 20-somethings with hoodies and ironic t-shirts riding around on skateboards, designing apps that get people to click on things more and sell, like likes and virtual currency and advertising. And it's like, well, yes, that is a part of what's happening, but there is so much more that tech is now getting involved in and influencing and impacting. And so as we think about areas where some of the bigger challenges and issues are facing us, whether it's healthcare, whether it's infrastructure, and how do you make it smart and more intelligent, whether it's things around security or transportation and mobility, how you get from point A to point B, things like education. Technology is now intertwined with some of these big, gnarly areas that are heavily regulated, that have a lot of potential for massive impact and disruption on our lives. And so with that, you have a need to be, in some sense, a little bit more focused and aware of the communities in which you're trying to serve, which are increasingly diverse in those areas. You can't just get away with developing an app for a small slice of an affluent portion of the population, make a bunch of money, sell the company, right? That was the Silicon Valley model in the early phase of sort of app development in that wave. And now you're starting to see a lot more with the Internet of Things and a connection to, a sense of place. So the idea of talent basing their professional and other decisions on where they want to live and work rather than, oh, I just want to make a bunch of money in a shorter period of time and then I'm actually going to move someplace I want to live. It's changing. So what we're seeing now is companies that have offices in the Bay or Seattle, or when giving an option to locate in Portland or Bend or Eugene or some other place in Oregon versus Silicon Valley or Seattle, they're choosing Oregon. And this is happening across the country where places that are seen as having a high quality of life, relatively affordable, and a number of tech companies that are there that offer professional opportunity, they're winning hand over fist in many cases for folks who are choosing, okay, do I want to really live in the Bay Area with 16 roommates and barely get by, even though on paper I'm making a lot of money? And so that trend is an interesting one. So for Oregon, the next 5 to 10 years are really interesting because of those large-scale macroeconomic trends. I will say, and I'll stop talking at that point, that there are some issues around what we do in that 5 to 10 year window, right? Because we do have a lot of challenges that we're facing with population growth, with a lot of these issues that are both opportunities in the short term, are challenges in the long run because we don't have the transportation infrastructure to support all this population growth. We have affordability issues that are cropping up. And so in what way does the tech industry have an obligation or a responsibility to help be a part of solutions that are crafted for that? Because right now the circumstances that Silicon Valley faces and Seattle increasingly are caused by growth in tech. So as we start to see that here in Oregon, what's the future that we want to have? What is our relationship to technology? And the video, I think, earlier captures that a little bit. It sets it up nicely. And I think that's really what we wanted to ponder today is, what's our future with technology here in Oregon at a human level and also as a society, really, in the state?
It's interesting that you say that because when we talk about the constraints that are happening in the Bay Area, Silicon, that really could be our future if we're not careful.
Yep.
It was interesting because I had the opportunity to review the HQ2 proposal that came out from Amazon. It was all the buzz several months ago in the economic development world. Amazon wanted to cite their second headquarters, 50,000 high-paying jobs, engineers and such, and everybody wanted to apply for it. It was a 7-page proposal. That was it. That was all they described what they want. On page 2, they talked about quality of life. Because they knew that where they were going to be located, that was how they were going to attract people. It had to be an attractive place. It had to be a place that, because people can work anywhere. They knew that to attract talent, it had to be that kind of community. So that's very interesting. Thank you. Now, John, we're going to have you help us a little bit here, understanding.
I'll turn mine on.
They'll be controlling mine. Yep.
Okay, very good.
Ooh.
Are we okay now? All right, we're okay now. Very good. Well, I'm going to also make reference to the video. I think that was a great setup for this because it introduced that sort of balance of fear and excitement around the future of technology. And that was, as we were sitting last year, the Portland Business Alliance and Bank of America came to my firm, Echo Northwest, an economic consulting firm, and said, you know, we're getting more and more questions about the pace of automation and what's happening. And we're starting to hear more things in the popular press about mass unemployment and the need, Elon Musk calling for a universal basic income. It's not going to be that far down the road. Or Bernie Sanders calling for guaranteed jobs, et cetera. So they hired us to put some numbers to that and to get our pencils out and think a little bit more deeply about what the near and longer term future holds for us. And I will say economists are frequently asked to forecast things, and frankly, we just don't do a very good job. The future is difficult to forecast. But I will say that this automation and the march forward is one of those rare known knowns. Donald Rumsfeld used to talk about the known knowns and the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. The march forward of more technology is a known known, and so I think it's very important for this community and for Oregon as a whole to keep this clearly in their vision in terms of how these changes are taking place and how quickly they're taking place, so that they can address it with a wide variety of public policy options. I'm not going to introduce those in the beginning, but happy to deal with those in the question and answer. So what I'm going to do now is just sort of step through a handful of the slides. I got to bring slides. I cheated a little bit. From the I circled back and begged that we produced in the research that we did with the Portland Business Alliance that we presented at the Oregon Leadership Summit in December. And the first takeaway that I would have for this community is that sometimes when you feel like you have a challenge, you're in the thick of the challenge. This pace of technology and automation, obviously it's been with us, as the video told us. We've been dealing with this going back to the Stone Age, et cetera. Technology has by and far been our friend. You go back to the late 1800s and we were living in small little dwellings eating salted pork and cabbage with no running water and terrible sewage problems and life expectancy in the late 40s or early 50s. And it was through technological advances across a whole wide array of things that we moved into larger dwellings and had light and refrigeration, and we were able to expand our diets and make hospitals a place that you would go to get well, not go to catch more diseases and die sooner, et cetera. So technology has been our friend, and that's why I think that video was, it takes that optimistic look at it, and it says, how are we going to harness this going forward for good, and let's not go crawl into the corner and hide from it. So now to just a couple of slides on this. The first one, just to give you a feel for where we have been, and this is prime age male labor force participation rates in the United States. Dating back to the 1960s. So the share of prime age males 25 to 54 who are participating in the labor force. And you can see that it used to be upwards of 95%. And I focus on males here because historically they always had a cultural expectation to work. Females have had a different path, and we could show that as well. But this one sort of stands out. And you can see that combinations, and I would claim it's both combinations of automation and globalization, have made the labor force a challenging place for those with less education. So you can see a big drop in terms of the share with a high school degree or less, some college or a BA or more. And that is something that we need to be paying attention to. The argument economists would make is that the skills of these prime age males have not kept pace with technology's demands of it. And so there's been a lot of elimination of routine work that we used to have. Much of that was in factories and manufacturing to begin with, but it spread into banks and all kinds of white collar positions as well. And so this is sort of the first indication that I wanted to show to say that while we've got some public policy challenges going forward that are probably going to accelerate, we're into this 30 or 40 years. The next slide I'm going to show is complements this in a way, and it's basically saying if I've got two broad skills that I was able to take into the labor force, social skills, the ability to work in teams and to negotiate and interpret, et cetera, and math skills. If I took combinations of those skills into the labor force, which ones am I going to more likely be able to find work? And so this just literally came out in October, November of last year. What you can see in terms of the share of the jobs in the country that have various combinations of these, the real winners are people that have gone out into the labor force with a combination of social skills and math skills. And if you had to throw one of those two broad skills away, you would hold on to your social skills. And I think that is going to be increasingly the case as you go down, as we move into the future. Go ahead.
So I was going to ask you, so how do you define social skills?
Social skills would be generally the ability to work in teams, the ability to move out and discuss with other humans what problems they're trying to solve, the ability to negotiate, to interpret.
Relational kinds of experiences.
Exactly, which is another reason that males, that technological change has been a little bit gender bias against males.
So what you're saying is women perform better in that?
Well,
I didn't go there.
If you think of the social skill, there's an awful lot of caregiving work and teaching, et cetera, that have been female-dominated occupations in the past, and those continue to grow. Nursing, long-term care, education, et cetera, have all been sort of female-dominated occupations in the past, and we have not shown a willingness to turn that over wholesale to technology. Education, we have tried to push, and many people trying to think of different ways to bring more and more technology into the education system, but humans still want to have a human on the other side to sort of spark. Think about this college. Right. People are still wanting to come here and buy small class sizes with a human professor. They're not turning it over to a MOOC, a massive online college, et cetera. There's still a demand to be face to face. So that's my takeaway when I look at this slide is the labor market knows what it's been doing, and the labor market has increasingly since 1980 been rewarding humans for being human, or humans who are capable of doing things that computers can't do.
And that will continue.
And that will continue, would be our argument. So.
That's good news.
Yeah, right. So we've got this one. Then we did want to peer into the future, and there are any number, I'm sure, if you just sort of follow this stuff in the popular press, any number of different studies that have tried to anticipate where the disruption is coming next. One of the more popular ones was conducted by a couple of Oxford University in England engineers, and they looked at U.S. occupations. All 700 and something individual occupations, and they went into the very specific tasks that are required in those occupations. They're coded by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And they went through and they tried to find what they called computer bottlenecks. Where's a task in here in this occupation that we can't hypothetically figure out how to do through automation, either through software or robotics or something of that nature. And so they went through all of those, and if they didn't find any computer bottlenecks, that occupation was deemed at high risk of automation. If they found a lot of computer bottlenecks, it was deemed at low risk of automation. And so they went through and they scored all of the occupations in the United States. And then we took their methodology and looked at it as it related to Oregon in 2016 for occupations. And so what you've got here going across the bottom is the risk of automation. So to the right are occupations that are at higher risk, and to the left at lower risk. And then if you go up and down, you're talking about the median wage of that occupation in 2016. And then the size of the bubble were the number of people in Oregon who were employed in that occupation in 2016. So the bigger the bubble, the more. So what you see is an awful lot of occupations on the far right-hand side that are hypothetically at risk of automation. And many of them are not going to come surprise because you can sort of read about them on an almost daily basis. So food prep and serving related pieces. My daughter goes to Grant. It's been relocated to 92nd and Powell. They had an old McDonald's out there. It was the third oldest McDonald's in the United States. And they knocked it down, and they're going to replace it with a highly automated McDonald's. So that franchisee has finally found the capital to build a McDonald's that doesn't take many humans to work in it. So they'll get some investment, and they will squeeze out some jobs. Sales and related, obviously lots of jobs out in rural and smaller parts of the country, smaller towns in the country have lost sales and retail work to Amazon and online work, et cetera. Office and administrative support. There's an outfit in Portland, Oregon called Ruby Receptionists. Which has complex algorithms, and they're able to do sort of front desk reception work for small businesses all across the United States because they code in, where is the CEO is going to be on the 7th hole of the golf course at 4:45 and is willing to take the call from so-and-so. And so the person can answer the phone, and it sounds like they know who the CEO is, and they don't have to be working in Albany, Illinois to do it. An awful lot of risk in a large number of lower wage jobs that don't have many computer bottlenecks in them. And then, of course, the advantage ones are sort of those positions that require much more human interaction, negotiation, and teamwork, et cetera, management and architecture and design, and all the work that these three folks are doing in terms of thinking about products that people want and designing the work that can then be deployed by coders. So that was sort of that overarching piece, and then we just said, okay, well, we know these occupations. How do they play out across the state of Oregon? And we came up with this map, which is the share of occupations by region that are, quote unquote, at high risk of automation. And you can see that where we sit here, and up through Portland, down through Corvallis, et cetera, is the most advantaged, at the lower end of the risk of automation, because we have much more of the hard to automate work, be it legal services, management, and architectural design, things of that nature, but very pronounced and high risk all along the coast. You don't have much of that professional service work and design, et cetera. But you also, you have an awful lot of that kind of food service work, and you have manufacturing work
Lots
that does lend itself.
processing kinds of facilities.
Exactly. So those were, that's where we see the challenges. And I think the takeaway there is that sort of the workers, in terms of low-wage workers in the regions of the state that have been struggling up to this point, are also the ones that are going to find, challenges going forward. Now, so that's the last depressing slide. The technologists, the technologists sort of see this hypothetical automation, and then, ironically, it's economists who end up being the human optimists that going back to the day of the Luddites, have always refuted the likelihood that there's going to be mass unemployment. Economists generally believe that humans will always find something more to do and be productive with respect. They are not going to become the horse. And so why is that? Basically 4 reasons. And the first one is a bullet point that is basically what the guy in the video said, is that technology complements labor more so than it substitutes for it. Yes, there are some things like blacksmiths that you don't see much of anymore, but more often is the case that when technology comes in, it makes that occupation stays and it becomes more productive and it changes the task. So think of bank tellers. Back in the day, bank tellers used to spend a lot of their time counting money. Well, they don't have to do that part anymore, so they became relationship managers and had different roles and responsibilities that were higher skill and more productive than simply sitting down and accounting for cash. The second one is humans know more than they can tell. So, for example, when we were called up here, none of us sat on that table. But why didn't we sit on that table? AI may not. AI has a hard time sorting out stuff like that. Or, for example, if it's, and we can get into debate about this, but when it comes to self-driving cars, if it's moving in a complex urban environment and it sees an adult jogger coming to an intersection making eye contact with the car versus a 5-year-old on a scooter who's just kind of staring off at the trees, a human's going to interpret those 2 different signals differently, and it's going to be hard to code that. Or you could think of all those complex intersections, or maybe they figured that out. We'll find out. We'll find out in a minute. The third is consumers never get enough. So in the first big wave of technology from 1870 to 1970, we invented air conditioning. And when we invented air conditioning, we were then able to invent Houston, Texas. So technology creates things that then creates all different things. And then the fourth is, at least to this point, and I know you guys are going to tell me that the innovation is going to start to innovate itself, and that will get scary, I agree. But at some point, there has to be some public and private investment for this stuff to work. Like the McDonald's example, it's not like instantaneously all the McDonald's are going to be automated, because somebody's got to raise the capital and somebody's got to decide that's what they want to invest in. And that's going to be the case across all these different ranges of technology. It is going to take time because people are going to have to devise it. They're going to have to spend money on companies like theirs. And once they spend money on companies like theirs, these folks are going to run into public policy challenges and work through all of that stuff. So economists would just say, hey, it's coming. And buckle your seatbelt. It's probably going to come fast. It's going to be moving at a rate that's faster than we've had in the past. But we're probably not talking about universal basic income in 2025 or mass unemployment. And that's the most optimistic thing I can say.
Well, that actually is more optimistic than I thought we were going to have. I think my mic died. Yep, okay. Can you guys hear me okay? I tend to have a voice they can hear. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, now we're going to jump in to learn a little bit more about our other panelists. And we're going to start with you, Brian. Can you tell us your, I'm giving you guys each about 5 minutes, just so you know. Kind of tell us what you're working on, where you've come from, and what you're planning to do in the future. Kind of help everybody understand what are the companies that you're working with.
Okay, so the company I work for is called Predicta, and we used to be a Silicon Valley, San Francisco company. We're not. We've shut down the office. We've moved employees. We're hiring them here. And we're now a Oregon/McMinnville company. And the reason we moved is for all the reasons Skip was talking about. It's a quality of life. I always joke. I actually lived in Alaska before I lived here. My wife made me come. She's something about 9 months of snow and a 3-year-old. I don't know. I don't understand it. But I always joke. So when I lived in Alaska, I had 4,000 acres. It cost me about $400,000. I moved to Oregon. I got some nice acreage, and I have no complaints about it. About 285. And yeah, it's like 1.2. I went down to San Francisco. I had a 1,400 square foot condo, 1.8. Well, it just didn't make sense. So we wanted to hire these very smart, intelligent people, and to find AI engineers and software engineers. Starting salaries were $150 and up. I had a part-time bookkeeper that was making $75,000 a year, and we never saw her. So we said, this is not the kind of culture that we want to grow a company up. So we moved to McMinnville. And we've hired one Linfield student, interviewing a few more. We've got some talent coming out of Portland. We have 2 former Silicon Valley employees that are in our office right now, and we're continuing to grow. And what we do is we are an artificial intelligence company. We have multiple different kinds of AI. Some is natural language processing, and that's the stuff that lets computers understand what your language is, whether it be English, French, Spanish, whatever. We have visual AI that understands what imagery is. So if you show me a picture of a Ford Focus, I can go out on the internet and I can find you 1,000 Ford Focus pictures. And then we have another AI that's called LDA-TVEC that creates relationships between concepts of words and products or topics, and then teases out sentiment, we call that intrinsics, about how people feel about a particular topic. So if you are in a consumer packaged goods company and you make folding knives, big industry in Oregon, we can tell you how people feel about your product compared to every other manufacturer of products in folding knives. And this is used in marketing, market research. Traditionally, this was done by Ipsos or Nielsen for, we call it brand health surveys. And they'd spend $250,000 to get information that once delivered is 6 months old, and they have to go redo it again. So what we did is we made a 7-day lag, because the AI takes a little bit to process all the new comments. Lipstick has 476,000 comments in the last 2 years. It takes us about 24 hours to sort through all those comments, delineate all the feelings, break that up by brand, and rack and stack your brand against your competitors. We can also do that for legislation. We can do it for individuals. How does Aaron Hernandez compare to Michael Jordan from a consumer perspective? How does this law, oh wait, is that, oh, I think that was really easy. I don't think we need AI to do that. Okay, how about Steph Curry and Michael Jordan? Is that better? I don't watch any sports. I don't have time. But I heard he's really popular. Jordan or Curry, I can't remember which one. So what we did is we wanted to take this incredibly time-consuming, grueling process, and we wanted to make it so that not only the Procter & Gamble's and Clorox's of the world or Nike's of the world could afford it, but we could bring this down to small, mid-market manufacturers that wanted to compete on the same scale. So, you know, we in the knife industry, we represent anywhere from you know, the big names that you know, down to companies like Columbia River Knife and Tool, which is, you know, not the biggest company in the world, but they have the same issues and requirements that a Gerber or a Benchmade or a Buck Knives has. And how they're perceived in the market space is really important to how they develop their products and how they develop marketing to influence the audience to give them a competitive advantage. I'm on the business side. I used to be a geek. Okay, I'm still a little bit geek, but so my role in this is translating the business value equation of what technology can do today, tomorrow, and how it's going to affect things 2 or 3 years down the road for a company. So as a chief revenue officer, my job is sales. But at the same time, it's how are we positioning and developing the product to address what we know is going to be a reality 3 years from now, and working with the engineering team to bring that to fruition.
Do you also, when you take a general term like, let's say, Linfield College, when you look at private college and so terms not necessarily specific?
It's any topic. So if you wanted to rack and stack Linfield College against I don't know. It's the only college. George Fox. We could do that, or we could do every single private college in the state, and it's all based on open source, which means publicly available information. We can also do privately mined information. We really don't care. YouTube videos, forums, blogs, you name it. If someone writes about it, and let me tell you, they write about everything. Frozen waffles. 250,000 comments every 6 months on frozen waffles. I didn't know people cared about those things, but they do. So it's any topic that you can imagine. If you can search it online, I guarantee you there's some obscure forum that you've never heard about that people are talking about you. So our job in life is to find those, bring those out, and allow people to react to the information. You're welcome.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, I came on, I got a brief introduction. I do systems engineering for autonomous vehicle development. Maybe just give you a little perspective on like what autonomous vehicle technology is, how we already interact with some aspect of that when we're driving a modern vehicle. And I guess some of the main differences there as well. So an autonomous vehicle is defined, a fully autonomous vehicle is defined as something that has no human driver interaction. And is typically classified on 4 levels, L4 being the fully autonomous technology, L3 being able to operate in some places fully autonomously. L2 is typically associated with Tesla Autopilot. It's able to operate semi-autonomously with an autonomous or with a human driver present. And And then L1 is your typical lane assist, like parallel parking assist type technologies. So these are all embedded technologies in modern vehicles today. But the bridge between L2 and L3, and even L3 and L4 is currently the space which me and many other similar people with diverse backgrounds are currently working on. So in terms of systems engineering, what that means for autonomous development, it's kind of the glue that pulls in other technical developments, like components of the overall process. So if we think about a self-driving car, it's like any other vehicle. It comes off, comes from an OEM manufacturer like Ford or Jaguar, Audi, if you like, or BMW, or any vehicle, Subarus. They produce a car that gets shipped to a self-driving technology company, and from there they have to install the sensors which can gauge and perceive the world. And typically companies rely on camera and LiDAR. LiDAR is light range detection, so it's laser, and it's used to detect distance. So when you combine the ability to see an image and classify something in a picture with the ability to judge how far away it is, you have a very powerful mechanism for understanding the world. But that's just at the kind of surface level. You install these into on top of the vehicle or around the vehicle. Then all of that information has to feed into a central processing unit. Usually a server on the vehicle with like a backup server as well as so it's its own. The car itself is one computer, and so systems engineering is a sort of discipline of being able to connect people that are like highly trained in, say, LiDAR development and hardware development, and they're developing in innovative ways to detect and perceive the world, with the embedded framework of this vehicle now needs to get from point A to B. So how can you take these various subdisciplines and merge them into one whole unit? So within systems engineering, there's various types of system engineering. I'm a systems engineer for onboard software. So once everything has been completed and the car is like active and moving autonomously, what kind of situations can we introduce to test and evaluate the performance of the software that's running on a moment by moment basis? And so, as part of my role dealing with safety and launch readiness planning, is making this argument about whether or not autonomous vehicles are truly ready to be on the road with human drivers. And the argument there is it's basically, is it as safe? Is it as good a driver as a human driver? That's the only argument, right? That's the only point we have to prove in all of this.
Does it depend on the driver?
Well, we look at we would like what does better even really mean? I mean, you can make a right turn perfectly every single time, and I've seen it. It's scary now. There's no swerving. There's no error in judgment. you can do certain things they can do certain things very well. But we look at the broader perspective as well. There are 34,000 traffic-related fatalities every year. Number increases about 5% annually. That's a national statistic. But that's just fatalities. We don't talk about like all the instances and just bad judgment and driving mishaps that result in just minor inconveniences. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. I think it's working. So yeah, a little background on myself. When I was here, as Heather mentioned, I studied finance, and then I also got a minor in computer science. And so I won't say that I'm as technically versed as Robin or focus on AI like Brian does, but I have a good idea of the industry and space, and naturally I think I have a solid background in tech. So I started my career out early at Amazon, and when you think of a company like Amazon, Amazon has its feet in almost several different industries, from its AWS division that focuses on cloud computing to its traditional core business that's its online retailer. You buy a good, you can get it in 2 days, and then even now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Prime Now, which essentially you can get it in 2 hours or even an hour. And then there's other divisions like our Amazon devices, that focuses on, Alexa and Echoes and being able to talk to your devices. And so kind of, being in this company for, I was there for about 2 years, I got to see a lot of innovative things happening and just how technology has changed our lives today and, how it's impacting us. And I think, what it's going to do in the future is both scary and good. Working as a finance guy, you have access to a lot of information. And so, working on the 3-year forecast of what Amazon's plan is, in 2020, it's crazy. And so, I don't know if you feel about Jeff ruling the world. You let me know how you feel, if that's good or bad. So, one of the things, for example, when I worked on the Alexa team, is that we have this, device that essentially you can interact with. And if you think back 50 years, there's no such thing, and then how much we've progressed, today, where you can ask it, the weather, you can ask it what to wear, it can give you, style options for your day, you can ask it, random questions like how much ounces does the gallon of milk have, or whatever. And so the idea of technology is essentially, the way I see it, is that how can we make our lives more convenient, more productive, and easier? And so, whether that's good or bad, it's, that's a subjective opinion. I think there is good and bad. And in my personal opinion, working at Amazon, I think personally what they're doing is good. I do think, though, that some of it, it's questionable. I think, we look at the recent Facebook Fandango with Mark Zuckerberg and the privacy of your data going out. We look at the Trump administration right now battling with trade deficits, with China, and China getting access to, the U.S. technology. And so, you can't not, I have a strong, opposition against people that fail to acknowledge technology as being very integrated in our lives. And I think that people need to accept that for what it is, and make the most of it, and obviously stay positive about it, but also recognize the potential failures or potential negatives that come along with it. But as of right now, I think that where I want to see technology go is to further bring opportunity to third world countries. So I was reading a book about 5 years ago about, talking about globalization. And so when you look at the United States, we're technically advanced, we're innovative, But certain countries like China and India, like 10, 15 years ago, they weren't really on the map. And because of technology, they're now allowed to be players in the game. And so I think with different avenues and different platforms where you're allowing third world countries and people to come in and get a fair chance, I think it's crucial for economic development and just as a society. So yeah.
That kind of sets it up. Oh boy, here we go. There you go.
Hi there. Thank you, gentlemen. This is really interesting. I consider myself not to be highly technical. Actually, I think my smartphone makes me stupider. I'm pretty certain it does, but this is really good information. So I have a couple questions for you. But the first one, and I'll share the mic, is I'm old enough that I was taught to be afraid of technology displacing me. And at the same time, now I'm asking myself, well, how much is the reality of workforce shortage driving automation? And are there certain industries where you're seeing that being more prevalent?
Well, yeah, I'll take a run at that. We're actually under contract to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. We're having a talent summit on May 11th at the Oregon Convention Center, and we'll talk about that all day long if you would like. Looking at workforce shortages, an economist's first question would be, how fast are wages growing? If wages aren't growing real fast, we're going to have a hard time as economists claiming a shortage. And they frankly have not been growing rapidly during this economic expansion, which just in broad brush terms, we would say we don't see a workforce shortage in mass. Now, we are at a very unusual time in this economic expansion. This is an unusually long economic expansion by historic standards. Economists would say that economic expansions are sort of like baseball games, and this one has gone into extra innings. There's no time limit to it. They don't end automatically with a number of years. But as you get deeper and deeper into it, you become more prone to the possibility of mistakes. Either inventories have grown too big in businesses, or some aspect of the economy has come overheated, et cetera. The Fed is going to have to decide how to raise interest rates. If they go too fast, they could trip up the economy, et cetera. But getting back to your original question, I'm sure these gentlemen can disagree with me because they have personal experiences with wage negotiations, et cetera. But if I'm looking broadly across the economy, our labor force participation rate in Oregon right now is still not where it was in the last decade. We still have workers on the sidelines who are not the labor force. So we would say there's still some headroom, and we still haven't seen that sort of runaway wage inflation that you would associate with a shortage. But I'll have an even sharper answer and charts on May 11th.
Nice plug.
And it doesn't. And yeah, and it doesn't. I'm in all seriousness. It is free admission. You've got Joseph Fuller from the Harvard Business School is going to be speaking there, and Jamie Marasotis from the Lumina Foundation. So it's a great event for anybody who happens to have a free dance card on May 11th.
A couple other points just to add on that. Just anecdotally, a lot of the tech companies that we work with, there's a lot of annual compensation surveys that get done for the area, comparing it to Seattle and the Bay Area, and we haven't necessarily seen the massive wage increase, especially not a runaway wage increase. So I would second that. It's anecdotally what we're seeing with a lot of the companies. Granted, there's exceptions that are more granular, like AI and machine learning is pretty hot right now, and a lot of those folks can write a ticket and kind of claim their price. And so, you know, data scientists in certain areas are also, you know, in hot demand. And so it caveats, right? I think one thing that's interesting is you look at how do you solve for the apparent shortage. It's that a lot of the tech companies that we're working with are trying to put butts in seats, right? They're looking to hire people who have 3 to 5 years experience at a minimum and are already trained and can hit the ground running. And many of those companies have relatively short time horizons, especially when they're startups and venture backed. Their boards are saying, okay, we might have a liquidity event in the next 5 to 7 years. You can't be investing in 10-year time horizons on junior talent to train them. We don't have the resources to do that. We're not on that time horizon. And so the challenge is, how do we as a workforce system, as different partners that are involved in solving this problem, how do we provide for the infrastructure necessary so that those companies are able to say, yeah, we're going to hire more junior talent than we would have otherwise, because we need to, we know it's right as well, but we're going to do it in a way that doesn't provide a drag on the more senior folks, because we need to produce in a short period of time. And so if you're able to have like apprenticeship programs and other types of infrastructure, right now there's a grand experiment going on nationally where there's federal funding and other regional programs focused on how do you bring the apprenticeship model from manufacturing into tech, where you're able to get people that minimum viable skill set that they need to get their foot in the door. Then the challenge is, how do you retain them? How do you not have them out in 18 months because they weren't able to take the holistic liberal arts, you know, skill set, the social, the other skills that allow them to continue to advance, the continuous learning. That's another issue in this. So first is foot in the door, and then how do we solve for the continuous learning, the training they need along the way. And the thing that's kind of pessimistic about this is, if you start to think about what happens to a candidate that doesn't have the well-rounded, you know, 16 years of educational experience going into that job, can we retrain for that, or can companies or the workforce system provide that training? The technical, yes, you can do that, but the social, the communication skills, the awareness, being able to operate in gray areas and navigate that, that's a tough order.
It's interesting because we had the opportunity to visit TTR earlier, and Sean Holyfield said, I'm looking for people who have a positive attitude and can, you know, work in a team. And the technical piece, the training, right, they had built it in, they were going to take care of that.
Mm-hmm. And they have to, because what they're doing is so specialized and idiosyncratic that there's no way a community college or a K-12 system is going to anticipate what these guys are they're dreaming up on the go.
Right.
In McMinnville. In McMinnville. So, you know, and one of the big pushbacks that economists will have on employers plus management consultants, who will frequently put out surveys that say, oh, there is a big shortage or big gaps, et cetera, is that employers have underinvested in the kind of training that was described to us today, where I think Sean and company are doing a great job. I mean, they're expecting some basic work ethic and, you know, broadly intelligent to come in, but then they're going to do the hard work to get them into the very specific skills that they need for that particular business.
So I can kind of address Silicon Valley and the culture that we're trying to make happen. It works. So Silicon Valley is kind of a weird place because literally everyone has their foot out the door half the time. You have entry-level engineers that are making $140,000 a year. They're also living in campers in the parking lot, though. So there is definitely a quality of life issue. I've seen it. It's amazing. You go to have a good bite to eat, and you get one margarita and have a dinner, and it's $48. It's like, this is insane. So one of the things that we're trying to establish at Predicta is that we hire people. We hire extremely motivated and people that want to learn. I think when we hired Erin, she wanted to be in marketing. And I didn't have a slot in marketing open, so she went to accounting. And she actually did a job in accounting that was absolutely wonderful. I think she spends 1 day a week in accounting and accomplishes everything she needs to do. And the rest of the time, she's self-prescribed her own job, which is in marketing now. So, you know, if you're willing to invest in your people, you can get them to do whatever they want to do. And the thing is that if they want to do something for the company, it's a lot better than hiring somebody that does a job, because they want to do this. You have to give the people, and this is a very, you know, new way of looking at it. You have to say, look, this is all the things that can be done. If you do your job and get it done, you know, you pick something else you want to go do and have fun with it. And that's the kind of culture that we're trying to establish, so that we have that employee satisfaction, just like TTR. And yes, it's not Silicon Valley. This is McMinnville. And we can have that kind of cool culture here. When in Silicon Valley, you know, the great engineer that you knew 2 days ago is already at 3 different companies because someone else gave him a better offer. I mean, literally they'll jump every 2 weeks in some cases if they have a unique skill set.
Tough to build a company when you're doing that. Do we have any other questions from the audience? We have one here.
Hi, so I totally agree with all your comments about what we're looking for in our new future labor force. I'm with WorkSource, so I'm all about workforce development. Is the agile learner, the person that wants to learn, the person that although they're doing systems analysis today, 4 years from now they're going to be AI or whatever it is that's next, that we don't even know what's next, right? My question is, what would you suggest or advise for our existing, somewhat staid management teams that are out there today that can't quite move to that decision-making process of what they need in their labor force? What can we do to help them open their horizons?
I'm wondering if Robin or Ahmed, if you have some thoughts on that. That would be interesting from your perspective.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of briefly comment on that. So I mean, I'm sure you know, like Amazon is, you know, putting a lot of big retailers out of business, and you know, I know, you know, friends, family members who are on like management teams at Sears or, you know, Target or wherever. And I think, you know, from my brief discussions of them, the biggest challenge that they have is, you know, what they mentioned earlier is like a strong talent pool that's technically savvy. And so, you know, my advice to like a management team would be to get young entrepreneurial people that, like you mentioned, that are adaptive, can learn quickly, and that have technical skill set, and, you know, have those personable skills like drive and ambition that will innovate on their behalf, and, you know, see, you know, what not the 5-year plan is, but what's the 10 to 20-year plan. And so I think that, you know, a lot of times companies, their old prior business models are just currently just getting disrupted. You know, we look at Uber just disrupting the taxi industry, Airbnb, you know, and there's several other types of these business models that are just coming in out of nowhere, and, you know, 3 to 5 years, they're taking out these business models that have been there for, you know, who knows how long. And so I think just having the right people and the right talent that, you know, have that flexible entrepreneurial mindset is super crucial, especially with this, you know, massive technological advance. You know, that would be my main advice.
I would also say it's not just in manufacturing or retail or commercial types of businesses, but I would say it's also in the way school administrators look at their work, and the way that a city looks at its work, and the way a library looks at its work, that bringing in new talent, that new perspective kind of shifts the paradigm of how things can happen. I think we have to do it on all levels, in everything that's occurring.
So, you know, we talk about autonomous vehicles, and this kind of dovetails into it. Most people think about autonomous vehicles, they think about wow, I don't have to drive to work in 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is. Okay, the real question you have to ask is when autonomous vehicles come to fruition, and they will, what about insurance? Has anybody ever thought, is the management at Oregon Mutual thinking about what happens when X percent of my business goes away? Because if you own a vehicle and you're not driving it, why on earth are you paying insurance? Because that's what insurance is covering, it's you driving your vehicle. Okay, if you get into a taxi today, you don't have to have insurance, you're not driving. Okay, so I think it's the management of the peripheral industries around technology that have to understand very quickly what's going to happen when these things come to fruition. Because if they don't think about it today, they're not going to be in the insurance business anymore. Uber's going to be in the insurance business, or Waymo, okay? The municipalities have to think about this, okay? You think about the average car owner. It's the second largest purchase you make in your entire life, besides a house, okay? The average person uses a car 270 hours a year. So for 8,700 hours, it's sitting there on a piece of pavement. Why? Why can't your car drop you off at work and then go pick up other people and make revenue for you? Then you've got to think about, how does that affect the municipality? If no one's driving on your streets, this is thinking forward, just think about all the parking spaces that frees up. Think about law enforcement. What percentage of McMinnville's police department's workforce is dedicated to traffic enforcement? You have to think past the innovation to really capitalize on what innovation is going to change. And in that gap between this thing that we're going to have and existing business models is opportunity. And that's where entrepreneurs come in. And so you really, I use autonomous vehicles as an example because everyone's thinking about how cool these things are going to be. But imagine city streets that don't have lights. Why do you need them? No one giving you tickets. I park my car, and my car goes away and parks outside the city while someone else is using, or it just waits there for me, because it knows I'm going to get off work at 7 o'clock. Yeah, it's going to be downstairs ready for me. I just hop in and go home. And then it sits in my garage. It's ridiculous. It's a $70,000 or $100,000 car. Why doesn't it go pick up more people? Think about the taxi industry. Think about Uber and Waymo, Uber and Lyft. Maybe Uber and Lyft's real game is autonomous vehicles. Think beyond the technology that's in front of you and look to what it changes. Because just owning a self-driving car is really cool. But if you didn't have to pay insurance, that'd be even cooler. And if your car actually made you money, that'd be even cooler. Because that's the real benefit of technology. You know, I have a landscaping service that does my grass in front of my house. And it mows and gets it all cleaned up. Well, he came over one day, poor Memo, and there was a Husqvarna automower out there. Mows my lawn for me. I don't do anything anymore. What is his business going to be? He went out and bought 20 Husqvarna automowers, installed them at other people's houses, and is charging them the same.
I have a friend, she has a Roomba
Yeah.
in her backyard. It mows her backyard.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
Husqvarna automower.
So I want to see if there are any more questions in the audience. Yes, Lacey?
As we're at a liberal arts college, I was wondering if you could speak to the role of like creativity and that kind of liberal arts student going forward in this kind of world that is ruled by technology.
Robin, do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, so part of being an effective worker anywhere is your ability to creatively problem solve. And it means different things to different people. To some, it can be just, how did I, write this genius algorithm to, fulfill my product requirement. But in other arenas, it's thinking outside the box. And a lot of people I work with come from a lot of different backgrounds. But one thing is certain, they're always able to kind of like draw on their own innate talent. And I think it comes coming from a liberal arts background, you learn to navigate a wide variety of subjects, and in doing that, you instill a quintessential sort of confidence in character, which is beyond any particular subject. It's a general thing. So that utility in the workforce, even in a soul-crushing tech job, which I have experienced, and some of you probably will experience too. There's room for that that character and that background. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've reached the time when we get to say thank you to our panelists for participating in this. We've actually had them here all day. They participated in a lunch with several of our business leaders and community leaders. We took a tour of TTR and got to see what that company's up to, and then this. So thank you so much for participating. A big shout out to the MEDP team, and that would be Lacey, Heather, and Rachel. They really pulled together today and created an experience that really is meaningful in this topic. So thank you so much to your work. Thank you. We feel like we have an extraordinary partnership in the college here, but we really enjoy working one-on-one with the Career Center team. They've been amazing through our internship program. They're always so thoughtful and helpful. Whenever we ask, they always say yes. So I want to give a big round of applause to the Linfield Career Center. Thank you so much. So I told an embarrassing story in the band. I'm going to tell the embarrassing story here. So about 12 years ago, I met an HP engineer, and he said, I'm working on this new thing, this newfangled thing. We're going to put a camera in a phone. And I looked at him and I said, what? That doesn't make any sense. I have a camera, and I have a phone. I don't need them to be together. Now, I literally have an office that's in my phone. I don't have a camera. I can do everything from my phone. So I was not an early adopter. I am going to be now. I am committed to making sure that I'm always thinking about the future, not in the moment, but what will this mean in 5 years when the world is completely different? Because that's what we're really going to be experiencing. Technology is happening so rapidly, and we need to embrace it, and we need to look at the way we do the tasks, the way that we move through this world, and make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. Because I do believe as technology evolves, so will humanity. That is the truth of it. And so if we embrace it early and in everything that we do, and we're thoughtful about where we invest our time and energy, this will be an extraordinary life. And a city like McMinnville can position itself in that world. We won't let it lead us. We will become thought leaders. We will be progressive. And so we need to make sure that we're always embracing that kind of approach.